Good evening and a very, very warm welcome to all of you joining us this evening for this virtual event looking at stepping stones to starting reception. My name is Clemmy Stewart and I'm the head teacher here at Surbiton High Girls Prep, and you are joined also by Tracy Chong, who is head at the boys, and we are so excited to be meeting with you this evening to start plotting those really exciting steps towards your little ones joining us here at the Girls Prep and at the Boys Prep in September. The purpose of this event is really just to start those conversations with you about how we can all be best preparing your children ready to start school in September. You have a long summer stretching ahead of you at the moment, which probably makes it feel like it's a long way away, but at the risk of concerning you, it does come around very quickly, and we just want to make sure that we have given you every opportunity to find out about what we do here at the two schools to help make sure your little boy or your little girl is fully ready for their learning experience with us. So today we're going to be going through to some steps for success that you can take and that we can support you with to make sure they're feeling ready, looking at some practicalities and organisational things, but also their feelings and emotions, because we know it's a really exciting time for them, but also one that may be some anxiety coming from all sides about this big step into education, and we want to be there to support you to develop your children's confidence in the best way that we can. We recognise that the last 15 months have certainly been challenging. It's always a really exciting challenge to find the school for your child, and you've had to do it in some quite unusual circumstances. We know that you haven't been able to come in as much as you would have liked to, or to meet with us as much as you might have wanted to. And there are so many elements of this that are out of all of our control. But what we have done as a school over the last year and a half is really focus on the mantra of focusing on the things that we can control and the things that matter. And there are lots of aspects that we can put in place to make sure that September is a really happy and fulfilling and successful start to education for your sons and for your daughters. This is the first of several events that we're hosting to help furnish you with all of the information that you might need in order to make sure that September feels smooth, happy and positive. But as always, there are lots of opportunities for you to ask questions and share anything that you'd like to. So please do use the chat box and either ask questions as we go through the event, or indeed at the end there's an opportunity for you to put any questions to myself or to Mrs. Chong. So moving on to those steps for success, what can you be doing between now and September? Obviously, some of your children will be back in nursery now, which is fantastic, and we really do urge you to have as many of those opportunities as you can take to have your children around other children. They've enjoyed some really special time with you, I'm sure, over the last year, enjoying that one-to-one attention that they might have had, but now's the time for them to be getting used to being back in those groups and collaborating. We've certainly found that since our children have come back to school, academically they've continued to flourish, but we have put in some additional time and support for them to just relearn how to be learning with others, learning with groups and working with other children, and that's something that your little ones will really benefit from working on as well. Do start those conversations now about starting big school, involving them as much as you can. I obviously stand out on the gate outside the Girls Prep every week, and there's one little girl who comes past every Wednesday and she waves, and her dad always says to her, that's going to be your school. And it's a really lovely way of her just getting used to the idea of being part of that bigger setting with those bigger children and getting ready for that idea in September. Involve them in your discussions as much as you can. Do drive past or walk past if you can. Have a look on our website, watch any of those videos that might have been sent out, but do all of that with your child so they can start to imagine what it looks like here in our school, and they can ask you any questions or share things that might be on their mind. Do write down any questions that they've got, because they're all really valid and really important. Knowing toddlers as we both do, often they can come at the most inopportune times. So rather than say, oh, we can't talk about that now, just jot it down and you can always revisit it at a time where you've got a little bit longer to have those discussions. Or if they're a question that you simply cannot answer, you can always send them on to us and we can make sure they've got an answer for them so that they know that their questions are valid. It's also worth starting to look at all the bits and bobs you might need, and there'll be lots of information coming out from the school in the coming weeks and months about what those things might be, but starting to think about uniform, shoes. Now obviously don't get the new shoes yet because their feet will grow, but start thinking about where you're going to be getting them from, what their PE kit might be, water bottles, snack boxes, all those sorts of bits and bobs, so they can start getting used to the things that they are going to need, and you can start getting into the mindset of always having them ready. Another big part of being successful in your start here at Surbiton is understanding that bigger picture that sits around the two schools. Obviously, predominantly, they're going to spend the majority of their time either at the boys' prep in Charles Burney House or at the girls' prep. But there are lots of other facets that sit around a Surbiton education that they may well make use of. So, for instance, we have our fantastic breakfast and after school club, which lots of our parents use right from day one in reception. And it's worth integrating that into some of those conversations. If you know our school and the setting, you'll know the assembly rooms that sit really halfway between both the boys and the girls prep, and that's where a lot of breakfast and after school club happens. So again, bring that into your conversations when you're moving around the local area. We obviously have our sport facility at Hinchley Wood as well, and that's where reception go for their learning outside the classroom. So again, if you're driving round, point out Hinchley Wood, show them that's where they're going to be doing all of their exploring, their learning, their climbing, their time in the forest, but also a lot of their sport, and make it sound like a really exciting adventure. The other aspect of that is our holiday camp, and again we use Ultimate Activity and they rent the facilities off us nearly every holiday. So again, that might be something you're starting to think about doing during their first academic year with us. Any aspect of that you can start discussing with them now is healthy, because it helps them to just start getting their head around some of those opportunities and the different places that they are going to be. There are other really practical things that you can do to help make sure that your little ones look as happy as those children do on the slides there. Simple things around developing independence, so getting dressed. And again, you know, girls don't wear dresses every day, but they do at school, so helping them get used to those buttons. I'm not expecting reception boys to be able to tie a tie yet, but getting used to that, you know, dress up and role play is really good fun. Helping them to put their shoes on. A really good trick we heard of recently was getting a really big sticker and cutting it in half and having it in one on each shoe so they can match up the picture to know that they've got the right shoe on the right foot. Being able to brush their hair is another really important one. Eating with a knife and fork. Obviously at the girls' prep and at the boys' prep, they have a hot lunch every single day. There's never a packed lunch. So being able to use their cutlery effectively without needing us to help them and teach them how to do it is really, really useful. Of course, we're always on hand to help them cut up and do those sorts of things, but just being comfortable with cutlery will be really, really helpful. We've put toileting on there, and sometimes that sounds like a given, but you can't take for granted the fact that this change in routine sometimes might alter that for a little bit. So the more comfortable they are with toileting themselves, the easier it will be for them to settle into that routine in a new and unknown environment. And finally, hand washing. Obviously, they'll have had plenty of practice in terms of hand washing over the last 15 months, and that's certainly something we want to keep going with post-pandemic, that they are keeping really, really good hand hygiene. Again, getting used to using soap, washing for long enough and drying their hands so that they've got really good hygienic habits. All of those things that you can practice at home now will make their first few days at school much, much easier. We've also listed for you a couple of other key skills that will help them to be really prepared for school life. Some of the wider things you'd expect to see in the classroom. So, for instance, sharing and taking turns. Classrooms are wonderfully collaborative places, particularly down in the early years, but where the children have been so used to being quite independent in their play and learning over the last year or so, it will be really good for them to be able to practice that, whether that's with you, whether that's with siblings, or lots of play dates between now and September. It's a really, really good skill to have. Equally, asking for help is a really important part of learning, and it's something we encourage in the children all the way through from reception to year 6. But putting their hands up to ask for that help is another really important habit. And again, you can develop that through some really fun role play. Greetings, again, getting used to saying good morning in the morning and using their teacher's surname is another good thing for them to be able to practice. And you can do an awful lot of this with them through fun role play. Their nursery settings will also be doing a lot of this in terms of getting them ready for school. Recognising their name is really helpful. We don't expect children to be able to read to a certain level when they join us, but being able to recognise their name on a peg or on a name tag is also really useful and helps them to develop those independent skills they need. Sitting quietly, again at an age-related level, don't worry, we're not expecting them to sit in silence on the carpet for great lengths of time, but they do need to be able to sit quietly amongst other people on the carpet and keeping them hands to themselves and being able to wait their turn to speak. And finally, using equipment. The classrooms, when you do get to come in and see them, they are an absolute plethora of gorgeous resources there to stimulate curiosity and help them to understand and learn, but they need to be able to do that effectively. Things like scissors, another really good habit for them to be able to get used to before they join us. So hopefully those are some really helpful tips and hacks that you can use in order to help your little ones get ready for school. I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Chong now, who's going to talk about the importance of talk.
Good evening, everybody, and gone are the days where we used to say children should be seen and not heard, because that's totally the opposite of what we believe here at Surbiton. We often get asked on our prospective parent tours, what do we need to do? What are the necessities for starting school for our son or daughter? And we cannot stress enough how important it is to talk and to share with them all of that. As Miss Stewart said, they have lots of questions and continuous questions, and often the same question every day. I think it's really important that we indulge them in that, but also just asking them, well, what are you most looking forward to? What do you think it would be like? Who do you think will be there? What makes you excited? Is there anything that you're worried about? It's so interesting, that worry thing. We think because we've known them in their nursery, whether they separated at nursery time or whether they separated with a nanny or a childminder, and when we sort of have those preemptive ideas that actually that's exactly what they're going to be like when they go to school, and they will amaze you, and we'll come on to that in a few minutes. But there may be some anxieties around, actually, I don't know where the toilet will be, and you can show them, because on the videos we show that, and there is an opportunity for you to see that, so that can allay that fear straight away. What do you think your teacher will be like? And they'll meet their teacher. Even if it's not face to face, and we're hoping it will be, but it certainly will be virtually, where we'll have story time for them. And what activities do you think you're going to really love whilst you're at school? So lots of things to do with art or running around or PE or science things, just getting them to sort of indulge in that conversation and vocabulary really that's around a love of learning. What we forget often is that when you and I, well, probably not you and I, but maybe even the next generation, but certainly me, I would have been, as a little child, that our entertainment was talking. That was what we did. And so we didn't have, well, we really barely had TV. I think we had 3 channels. I'm making myself sound really old, but we certainly had 3 or 4 channels on the TV. We had board games, yes, of course we did, but we didn't have anything like the busy life that we have today, or that our children have. So I think it's really important that you keep that dialogue open all the time. So remind them that they're bound to have lots of different feelings, and that other children are going to be in exactly the same boat as they are. Everyone's in the same position, wanting to make new friends, and look how well they've made friends in their own nursery or their own dance class or their own rugby tots. There's lots of times where you will have seen them making new connections, and they need to know that the teachers are there to help. They're not leaving mummy or daddy or grandma or grandpa behind and then into the deep unknown. They have another attached adult, or at least one attached adult, and remind them very much to ask for help. Sometimes, you know, you'll get to a situation where the end of the first day you can see that somebody looks uncomfortable, and actually you know damn well that they need the toilet, and they all day long they haven't really thought to ask for that because actually they're a bit embarrassed, or perhaps they don't want to ask. It's encouraging them to ask, and we will of course facilitate that as well. But I think it's important also to tell them how you feel and what the experience was like for you, and whether you loved school and what you loved about school, because actually it makes it feel much more real for them if they know that you've been through it as well. One of the things I think we sort of have discounted with, I'm just about to talk to you about all the feelings that they will have as they start, and this is exactly what we experience year on year. I have to be perfectly honest with you, and I think we would both agree, this year has been incredible. It has been the most unusual year. Last year's reception started in September, probably having not seen the school, not probably having been in nursery for some time, and stepped into the school gates because their parents had prepared them for what was coming. We'd had lots of virtual events with them. They walked into the school gates, up the steps, into the door, one little boy at the boys' prep, and I think one girl or maybe two girls at the girls, turned round, waved goodbye to their parents and went on in. And the first tears were, oh my goodness, I've got to go home, tears. And there was no more, you know, you expected this separation. I tell this story that at the gate, we had a row, almost like a wedding tunnel, where your SLT and teachers already there to pick and scoop someone up. And no, there was no need for any of that. We were almost redundant. But there is a range of emotions, and one of the things that does happen is that the first few days they may be super excited and come in and be all, you know, I'm loving my new bag and I love my new peg and I like my new friend. And then actually after that first weekend, reality sets in, and sometimes those emotions of, hold on a minute, you said I was going to school, what I'm going again to school, and that sort of reality of this is what you do, it is quite difficult for them to understand. So they can get particularly tired. They can get a little bit clingy, so they can have those moments of, well, actually, I want you to come in. And we haven't seen very much of that this year, if I'm honest. They have been incredibly resilient. You can occasionally see behaviour that you haven't perhaps seen in your dearest darling daughter or son before. And that can come in many forms. Very much so up until the point that they start school. They're very egocentric in their play. They're very focused on themselves. And then actually, as they enter that sort of 4th and 5th year, they are starting to build those relationships, to share their emotions and share their feelings. So that sometimes has an increase in challenging behaviour, but often, more often than not, you will see that at home rather than us seeing that at school, and long may that last. There should be excitement. It is a big event for them, and they will have a whale of a time. So I'm sure there will be a level of excitement for them. And that fact that they're becoming a big boy or a big girl now, they're joining their siblings or their cousins or their aunties, or they have that aspiration. I think it's really important to acknowledge all of that and just take time to talk it through with them and legitimize it, but work through it. And I think it is really, you know, it'd be very remiss of us to say, oh, everybody goes to school, don't worry, get on with it, you'll love it. Well, actually, no, because there's lots of things going on in their mind that they need to work through. And you do too as parents. So this is on to you and your range of emotions. Please do ask us for help. You can support each other. Surbiton is built around a very close network of a community. Most of our families, in fact, are very local, so you always have a very good support network. If you're running late or you can't get to pick up, there is always people around who will be able to help you. But share how you're feeling. If you remember way back, and it will probably feel like a long time ago, but when you first had your children, you had that NCT group or your health care group who helped support you through those just transactions that were alien to you at that point, completely alien to you. And the same goes for schooling, and you need to share your feelings with each other, but also reach out to us. Don't let your little ones see your fear. It was quite interesting that as we said goodbye to the parents and the boys just went through the door and we shut the door, and the same thing happened to the girls, the parents were the ones that were at the gate. Big moment for them, and it absolutely is a big moment, you know, but those transitions are always big moments. When you first hand them over to nursery, when you first hand them over to reception, all the way through, I promise you'll still be having it when they go into sixth form and they're all of a sudden not in uniform ever again, and you start to have that little fear of transition all over again for them. So these are just transitions that what we want the children to realise is that they can be resilient, they can manage them. It's normal to feel a bit nervous, but actually they can manage it. And you do use our Parents Association. It's a very active Parents Association and hugely supportive. So please do obviously use those to support you as well. We're all at the end of the phone or an email, so we are all able to help you, even if it's a very small, personal to you or individual thing that's niggling you and worrying you. We have had all of those questions before, believe us, so it's absolutely fine to put those down in a call or an email to us. So we're back on to talking about our relationships, and I think I'm handing over to, maybe I'm doing this one and I'm handing over to Miss Stewart and the next one. One of the key things I think about the home school relationship is we really need you as much as you need us to be part of that triangle approach to making sure that your child has the best shot for success in their school life and for happiness. So it's really important that we get to know each other, we understand what you need from us and what we need from you, that there's lots of communication goes home, and there's lots of opportunities for us to meet. We will continue to have some virtual events, but also some real events, and goodness knows what that will be like after such a long time. But all those positive interactions are really important for your child too. So building that community with the Parents Association, with the staff, with us, we're all a big part of a team. That means we build up together a really supportive community, which actually across this zebra crossing here is about 1,500 pupils all told. So it's an incredible team of very supportive professionals, parents and children. So we're really looking forward to you being part of that. And I am handing over to you now. Sorry, Miss Stewart.
That's fine. So the final part of this evening is looking at how we build confidence in the children, and that's something we feel very, very passionately about. If they feel confident, they feel happy and secure, they will absolutely reach and unleash their potential. One of the ways we do that is through our buddies, and your little ones will be expecting a letter in the next few weeks. Don't wait for the door quite yet, but in a few weeks' time they will get a letter from one of the boys or girls in Year 5, introducing themselves and telling them about how excited they are to be their buddies. And that is a really, really special relationship. I'm not going to talk any more about that now because we're actually going to build it into one of the pastoral events coming up. And I'm going to ask some very special people to talk to you about that a bit more, who can tell you far more than I will. So hold that in our pocket for now. But the buddies is a really, really special process and something you can talk about with them already. We've pinched with pride the next few slides from Elaine Halligan. Now, many of you may have been able to join us for our parenting talk from Elaine a month or so ago, and she talks an awful lot about effective praise when building confidence. And she'll often say, those things we often say, oh, you're amazing, you're wonderful, you're so clever, are lovely, and they boost that ego and sense of ability. But actually, if you can be a bit more precise with your praise, it will really help your children to start recognizing what they can do in preparation for coming to school. So I won't read through all of those, but some really good examples there of just the sorts of things you could be saying, very much mirroring our approach here at Surbiton High School to developing independence and confidence in the children. We're very prescriptive with what we can see them doing effectively. What I also quite like about those last few examples is the fact that you then explain why that's helpful. So I can see how hard you're working. That's so helpful because when you find things tricky at school, if you keep working hard, you'll be really, really successful. And just those sorts of things that help start frame their thinking around working hard, trying different things, getting better than yesterday but not quite as good as tomorrow, and that continuous process of progress rather than being the best or being able to do something or not. It's all of those little incremental gains. That's very much our ethos here at the school, and so if you can reflect that in your language, that will make sure that we're able to have that really joined up approach that Mrs. Chong was talking about. We've also popped down some other ideas that you might want to start doing with them around things like puzzles and games that they can increasingly do independently. Role play is fantastic for all of this. And again, you can practice some of those skills we were talking about at the start of the talk through role play. Dressing and self-care, again, those opportunities for dressing up, trying on different things, and just setting up some of those really little routines, maybe getting a part of breakfast for themselves or remembering to put their shoes on or getting their reading book. Just things that are in their grasp that they can really start to see their own independence. Taking on more responsibility obviously is always good, but at an age appropriate level, of course. And finally, mirroring you or their older siblings. You know how much your children are sponges. We certainly see that at school. And if they're seeing some really positive behaviours from their older siblings or from you, that's really, really helpful. And as Mrs. Chong was saying, talking positively about those school experiences will be really, really important for your little one as they start to build up their confidence looking towards the next few months. So I can see a question's come in already, which actually ties in brilliantly with this around what else are we planning. So we're continuing to plan a programme of virtual events. Our hope is very much that as the guidance shifts and some of those restrictions ease, we'll be able to get more and more of you into school. Obviously, the challenge being that we are already full of lots of children and parents, and so it's just managing that really carefully. But you will hear from admissions at every point whether an event is going to be virtual or whether hopefully we can get your children in. We're going to have some story time sessions for your children to get used to the classroom environment, and they will be read to by their teachers and their TAs. So again, they're getting some familiarity of those faces. We will continue to do our nursery visits. Now, obviously, at the moment, those are very much virtual, hence the inverted commas. But please do rest assured we have a huge handover with our nursery schools where we talk about what makes your little one tick, what they enjoy doing, what they might struggle with, so that we can build a really holistic picture before they come and join us in September. And of course, those buddy letters that I've already spoken about, that is a real highlight. And we're hosting lots of different events where you can find out about teaching and learning at Surbiton High School, pastoral care at Surbiton High School, and then the final event, Mrs. Chong and I will separate out and have a very, very operational Q&A session with all of you about anything you still need to know about for the school. So that's it from me. Mrs. Chong, I'm going to hand over to you for any questions.
So hopefully, So hopefully by now you've stored up lots of questions. If you think they are very specific to you personally, please hold those and we can answer them via email, as I say, or by phone. If they're more generic and you think other people will want to know the same thing, that's amazing. Just put those in the chat box. We've got Mrs. Coleman online here too, who's our head of admissions, and she can be fielding some of those queries and questions for us too. And I think we have got quite a few, haven't we, Mrs. Coleman?
We have indeed. Hi, Mrs. Chong. Firstly, this sort of relates to lockdown. What does the online provision look like for reception pupils should we go into another lockdown in the autumn? Quite apt with the new variant, I think.
Yes, I mean, we are sincerely hoping that that is not going to be the case, of course. I think one of the things that we've taken away with us from the last 15 months is just how amazingly agile we've been able to be. We've been able to move from a complete in-school approach to a complete online full timetable of lessons right the way from reception to year 6, including mentoring, one-to-one sessions, learning enrichment sessions, all of our the curriculum that they would normally have in school but online, and that we're very, very lucky to be able to do that. We've had a blended approach where some of our year groups were in and some were at home, and we coped with that. We also had a period of time where some children were at home self-isolating or at home with vulnerable parents or grandparents, and therefore were accessing the live teaching from home. So we've kind of done it all now, and actually we feel very, very ready to move fairly quickly back into that should the need arise. We are sincerely hoping it doesn't, but because what makes our day is their smiley faces walking through the door. But obviously if it does, we are absolutely ready for that.
Thank you very much. How often do you have parents' evenings and issue reports so I can find out how my son is progressing?
So we have reports 3 times a year, and in fact, we're just redoing our structure for when we have parents' evenings. So it does slightly depend on your year group and the specialist teachers, but you will have 3 opportunities to have parents' evenings as well. But we do run a very open door policy. So if you did need to pick up the phone or talk to your form teacher, we encourage you to not wait to parents' evening to have that conversation, but to just dip into us as the weeks go by. It's amazing what the children achieve even in a half-term period. So it's really important that we do that together. So any niggles or anything that's slightly concerning you, it's just best to bring that up before that event.
Fantastic. Miss Stewart, congratulations on your new role. There's a couple of questions about this. Will we have the chance to meet your successor pre-September?
That is a wonderful question. We are in the process at the moment of longlisting candidates, and they are coming into school next week, which is really exciting, and a chance for them to obviously come and get to know the school and begin that recruitment process. We've been absolutely blown away by the number of people who want to come and work here. Not surprised, because it is the dream job, I can assure you. But obviously, depending on their timeline of handover, that will determine whether you meet them before September or not. But there will absolutely be opportunities for you to meet that key person. And in the meantime, our leadership team remains the same here at the Girls Prep and will be very well supported by Mrs. Chong.
Fantastic, thank you. Next question. How do you help a fussy eater at lunchtime? Will you ensure that they eat a proper meal?
Well, the short answer to that is, aren't they all quite fussy at times? We encourage as much as possible. So there is a really good offering within the lunchtime, because of course we are catered for by a catering company who caters for all of the children right the way through from 4 to 18. So we have that opportunity to have a really good selection. So that is a blessing for those fussy eaters, and we will work with you. So it may well be that your child's allergic to something, or perhaps they have a bit of fear of certain foods, and we will work with you on that and guide them. We absolutely do not force feed them. That is absolutely not what we will be doing, but we will certainly be guiding them to make good, sensible choices about their eating.
Fabulous, thank you. What is the best way to ensure a smooth first day at school? And I know you've referred to this throughout your presentation, but what is the best day? What's your top tip?
Do you know what? I think we've given you lots of headlines about how to prepare them. And actually, I do think the grandparents make a big fuss of these days, don't they? And aunties and uncles will be on the phone, have a fantastic first day, and all of those kind of things. I think the best option on that morning of that first day is business as usual. Breakfast, sort your clothes, almost a bit of a, well, we're used to this rigmarole, aren't we? We're okay with all this. Just a very relaxed. The thing that will stress you the most on the first day is if you are scrambling around, leaving late, think you're arriving late, worried that you won't get through the gate. You will, of course you will, and all of those things will happen, and we'll be there to pick you up. It's absolutely no problem. So I think just actually take it in its stride, and actually the one thing I would say is just let's make sure they get enough sleep in the run up to that period. One very infamous reception child who I couldn't quite get my head around 2 years ago cried for the first 4 days, and it was only when her parents told me that they'd spent the 6 weeks of the summer holidays in Singapore that I realised that the poor girl was thinking she was coming to school in the middle of the night, and therefore was exhausted. And I think those things are really important for you to communicate with us too.
Brilliant, thank you. A question again about lunch. Is lunch provision fully catered, or do some pupils also bring packed lunches?
No, nobody brings packed lunches. Everybody is catered for. Sometimes the children will go with a packed lunch, which is provided for them by the catering company here, to our Hinchley Wood site for the afternoon. So sometimes they're taken there to have a picnic lunch, but no, it's never, only on trips would we occasionally ask you to provide a packed lunch.
Brilliant, thank you. Fantastic question here. Can you talk a little bit about the diversity in the incoming reception class? How many kids are based locally versus travelling in? What does the ethnic diversity look like? How many have siblings in the school already?
Well, that's probably the trickiest question of the night, because actually I haven't analysed the list yet, if I'm honest. What I will say is that ordinarily most boys or girls coming are living within a 3 to 5 mile radius of the school, so everybody is quite local. We encourage that community feel, as I said, as much as is possible. You can imagine that Kingston and Surbiton are a diverse demographic, and we absolutely serve that diverse demographic. That changes year on year, and actually so does the siblings, the amounts of siblings. I think across the two schools, if I'm right, there's about 40 boys have siblings at the girls' prep, and that's not at the girls' senior school, so they're probably more than that. So there's quite a large number of them that do have siblings. And the beauty of that, which is something we haven't touched on today, is that they have that opportunity to be, yes, to know what their siblings' school is and what they do and what they're up to, as if they're part of it, but they're also alone in their autonomous in their own school too. I'm sorry I can't be more specific about the diversity. You can imagine we haven't had a chance to meet very many of our pupils at this stage, so I can't really be that specific about that.
Thank you, Mrs. Chunk. There's one question here about your after school club. Can you let me know a little bit more about, basically, I think breakfast and after school club would be a good choice.
Yes, so breakfast club starts at 7:30 and after school club runs till 6 o'clock, and that is open to all the way through from reception to year 6. There are a wide range of activities that happen in the after school club, and some children may do a co-curricular. We have about 60 co-curricular clubs at the moment, probably rising up to 80 once we're without the COVID restrictions. And some of those are mixed with the girls' prep and the boys' prep together, and some of them are separate, but some children will go to co-curricular and be picked up after that, and others will then go on to after school until 6 o'clock. I'd say probably 60% of our parents both work, possibly a little bit higher now. So that is often the case, that there is never going to be a time when your little Johnny is the only one in after school club. It's never going to be the case. It's a very active after school and co-curricular club.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, that seems to be all on the questions now that we seem to be having.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I know it's a busy time of year and we really appreciate it. We have got our other events coming up, and there will be opportunities to ask questions for those. One that focuses on the pastoral aspect of our curriculum, and one that is about the learning and the teaching aspect. And as Ms. Stewart said, the one at the end, which will then split off into the two separate schools just for specific operational questions. So if you do have questions that purport to that, please do let us know. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your week.